For those of you that don't know, the Stormwater Center is located at WSU Puyallup, and it is a cooperative relationship. We were formed in 2011 under a legislative mandate, and we work cooperatively with the University of Washington at Tacoma through Joel Baker and through Carla Malesi, who runs our TAPE program. Puget Sound recovery, as you may know, is like a mosh pit. There are hundreds, possibly even thousands of people that are involved. The money all comes from EPA. Just this year, we have issued $15 million worth of RFPs and direct awards. So these are all the partners. Here we are here. The Stormwater Strategic Initiative lead. So when you see the word SIL, it just stands for Stormwater Initiative lead, because saying that all the time is just too much. And this is currently our team. John Stark and I are populate this team, but I do most of the heavy lifting. Don't tell John I said that. And so this is our team. And so Derek Day is the lead. Dustin Billheimer is the head of our toxics in fish or toxics in aquatic life implementation strategy. Emily is the implementation strategy lead. So you'll see her name often as a contact on RFPs. Francis is our marine water quality lead. I perform sort of a unique role because I'm an integrator, a science communicator, and kind of have my hands in almost everything except for direct finance and wastewater. That is definitely out of my wheelhouse. And then Michelle and Owen and Ron are very important because they manage the huge amounts of money that comes in. This is us from last summer when we all got together. So we get giant plugs of money from EPA's geographic programs. And I'm being a little bit cheeky here, but we do get a tremendous amount of money really through federal tax dollars. And we have managed here in Puget Sound to get more money than any other estuary in the United States, even though the Chesapeake Bay, by coverage, is bigger. We get a lot of money. And so there's a tremendous amount of accountability that comes with that. And, you know, way back when, for those of you who were around when Kathy Fletcher was here, we started off with the Washington Water Quality Authority. That morphed into the Puget Sound Action Team that Nancy McKay and then Scott Redmond ran. And then in 2006, there was enabling legislation that created the Puget Sound Partnership. So the Puget Sound Partnership is the state agency that is holistically responsible for Puget Sound recovery. And in 2015, EPA had issued an RFP that was competitive that created these three SILs, stormwater habitat and shellfish. And so we partnered with the Department of Ecology, who is the lead for this work, and Commerce. And so the three organizations work in sort of symphonic congruence to make things happen here. So this is very important. This is a great website. You'll want to navigate to pugetsoundestuary.wa.gov. And on this website, you can find everything that you want to know about funding, which I know a lot of you are probably here and interested in. This is RFPs, what's coming up, and then also importantly, what we have funded. And today, we're going to be talking about what we have funded in the past that is now closed, what is currently in the hopper, and things that are coming up. And so we have these implementation strategies, and we'll have some slides later about this. So we have three of them. The freshwater quality is the benthic index of biotic integrity. And in many ways, this is a property for multi-scaled watershed planning. Marine water quality, which is barely been hatched. And that's Francis's body of work, because we previously had not been really dealing with wastewater. and then toxics in fish. And so these implementation strategies come from the Puget Sound Partnership's Vital Sign or Indicator program. So they were given to us. So as a consequence of working on the sill, we got these strategies. So we didn't choose them. They were given to us. And you'll hear today that the toxics in fish and toxics in aquatic life will be used interchangeably. What happened is that when we first wrote the strategy, we didn't have cage mussels, and they added that as a research area. And so that's why it's toxics in aquatic life. And also, I wanted to say that if there are any questions along the way, or if something is unclear, just raise your hand and ask. So this is pretty casual. So if anything's like wonky or weird, just, let me know. But anyhow, please go to that website, because there's a tremendous amount of information, including links where you can get information about what has been funded. So when we first started our work, we literally had 600 near-term actions or projects that were given to the 3 strategic initiative leads. And it was very difficult to sort through them, because we sort of didn't have like a rebar or house foundation by which to choose them. And there was even something that we euphemistically called NTA camp, where everyone got together and tried to sort out what we had. And we deploy an excellent stormwater advisory team. I'll show you in the next slide who those people are, and they help us to make these decisions. So the SIL works in consort with the advisory team that we call a SIOT. And if you want to look at our investment plans here, this is an open box link. Please let me know. Good morning, Eric. Whether you can get in. So basically, in the last 3 years, there was a major shift in 2 ways. We really moved away from this project scale approach to what are called investment plans. And so over the course of like structurally a year, we got together with our advisory team, and this is who's on the advisory team. You probably recognize or work with many of these people. And through a fairly sort of rigorous process of sorting and using mural and kind of shaping up the entire world of stormwater, deciding in any given year what we were going to focus on. And we have 3 investment plans at this point. We're working now at issuing RFPs and direct awards with our 3rd investment plan. And we can't fund everything at the same time, obviously, but it's been very successful. We tried to really pare down the RFP process so that it was not insane. And here in this slide, these are the funds that WSU, of course, had to compete for, and then I don't get involved in cases like this. And then we do also have a conflict of interest policy for the members. And so this is some of, yikes, some of what's been supported. So that John Stark was the lead PI in this neonic research on aquatic invertebrates. Ani Jayakaran, who runs our GSI program, worked on optimizing GSI in South Puget Sound. A very, very popular project was Rural Stormwater Solutions, and it turns out that, bioretention is not really that popular in rural areas. There's a tremendous amount of flooding. And so they did a very good job of framing up stormwater issues in terms of just everyday bread and butter flooding, which can, of course, have enormous personal property, human health, and animal implications. Ani also worked on a BIBI invertebrate supplementation. It turns out that putting macroinvertebrates in streams is not that useful, but good watershed planning does increase the density and the variety of macroinvertebrates. We also worked on a really interesting Latino LID outreach in the Snohomish Basin, and there were something like over 10,000 people that were reached primarily in Everett and also in Monroe. And during this period of time, obviously the pandemic hit, and so a lot of our projects had to be reconfigured because, previously what had been in person had to go online. And so that sort of delayed some of this. We worked also with other partners on an important urban tree and stormwater integration project. And there are some links later in the presentation that I in particular are very excited about, being an urban dweller myself. And Scott knows from work that we're doing together in this GSI accelerator how important urban trees are, and not just little seedlings, but really taking protective efforts to protect mature trees. And Phil Bennett in Snoqualmie is one of the leaders. His position as an urban forester was completely funded through stormwater fees. And so this story continues to unfold. And then here, the piloting stormwater facilities to address 6 PPDQ, that is a very, very recent project that's being done in consort with King County, and they were looking at the extent to which, sorry, I have to look, wet ponds and modifiable roadside ditches can be used to mitigate the impacts of 6 PPDQ. So this one's pretty exciting. Moving on to DPAVE and LID retrofit, I think this is sort of an underutilized potential, DPaving. There is an organization called DPAVE Puget Sound that is based in Portland. And in this case, we use the IDEA School, which is in Tacoma, and they actually depaved part of the parking lot and then retrofitted it with low impact development. And there was also some really interesting work that was done down in Kent through World Relief and this very large church. And it was a really just a marvelous combination of the community getting together with a lot of volunteer help from engineering and construction companies. And there are these great videos of these big, like burly men, they're all men, and they're depaving, and then all of these immigrants and refugees. And what they did is when they did the retrofit, they put in culturally appropriate planter boxes so that the community could grow and harvest food from the countries of origin that they liked. And so it was really great. I mean, it actually almost made me cry. And then permeable pavement standards development, for those of you who don't know, Ani and John and others do a lot of permeable pavement research. A lot of that research is funded by Boeing through their foundation. Lori Blair has been incredibly generous. She also funds a lot of the Nature Conservancy work, and we are really indebted to them for their support. And it turns out that we took the carbon, like off-spec fibers from Boeing planes, and put them in the permeable pavements, and it really increases the performance. There is a lot of mythology around permeable pavements that is just not justified. So we know that we have to work on kind of writing the case for permeable pavements. And that also will involve, I think, a fundamental restructuring of operations and maintenance, which for all of us is a perennial issue. So this is just a notation about that trio of projects that were related to integrated stormwater and urban tree canopy. And then I'll make sure that you get these slides because these are all active links. So there was a technical report, there was a handbook, and then there's a fabulous toolkit that's really easy to use. And I would really recommend, the technical report would be better for all your tech people, but if you want to like upsell this work to managers or policy people, I think the toolkit is probably your best bet. So we're going to pivot for a minute to talk a little bit about human beings. So we are all deeply entrenched in a science and engineering frame in stormwater. We talk a lot about the permit, and we've got laws, and there is enforcement. But really at the heart of our work is our relationships with human beings. How do we get along? How do we communicate? How do we collaborate? How do we do integrated skill development? How do we express common values, and how do we move forward? And I can't even say enough how important this is, and it's really undervalued in a lot of ways. And the image that you're seeing on the left is something called the Cognitive Bias Codex. It was developed by the University of North Carolina. If you look it up online, it is active and live. And then in all of these nodes, you will look at all the cognitive biases that we operate under. So even though we're in an engineering and a science-based world, it is buffered by the bias and sort of the chaos at some level of the human condition and what it means to be human. And as a result, I think it's very important that we hire more social scientists and communicators and people who really understand this so that we're working synchronously in the same direction. This is also just a nod to humans as group animals. We seek what is called in-group affiliation. That can lead to some downsides like groupthink, but what will happen is that we are always going to align what we're doing to stay in the good graces of our group. The upsides is that it also facilitates sort of group learning. This is just a funny little cartoon here about economists, and the reason why I'm sort of poking fun at them, along with lawyers too, is that the entire industry is based on a rational actor model, which is false because we're not rational. We try to be rational, but we're simply not. And then also, if you have time, great holiday gift for people that you care about. A book called The Lonely American, which talks about the human need to be included. And this is related to being sort of an in-group affiliation with other people. And apparently, if you are outed or ostracized, I'm sure everybody on this call at some point in their lives has felt excluded for some reason, either socially or professional, and it can lead to really negative outcomes. And so this is really a plea for being inclusive in all ways. And this also includes other people's skills, points of view, and trying to be, just kind of more of a big tent. This is just a slide about the limits of working memory. And so we have 1 billion more neurons, and those are, connected to 1,000 other connection to other neurons, but like 7 chunks of information. So when we are communicating, and this is particularly a problem, I think, in our field because it is so dense and there is so much jargon. If you can chunk things out into 7 items, that would be great, because that's literally how much people can put in their heads and keep. Also, just a little brief thing about audience identification. I hear all the time that there are only 2 groups. There's either scientists and engineers, or there's the general public, and that is not true. There's psychographic and demographic information around values, attitudes, upbringing, that creates quite a bit of nuance in audience identification. And I do have another presentation that I did on some of the tools that you can use to identify your discrete audiences. And I'm happy to share that. And you can pay somebody to help you with audience segmentation, but I think the exercise alone is really important in understanding who cares about our issues, who's got skin in the game, whose assets are being damaged, who stands to gain, right? So with good stormwater management, there are definitely some pluses, and includes the private sector as well. And then another tool that I really like is to use communities of practice. They are not stakeholders. It is wholly different. So communities of practice acquire, store, refine, and then share their knowledge. And for many years, Jessica Knickerbocker in Tacoma ran a permeable pavement community of practice. So there were 3, subgroups, and they would get together on a regular basis to discuss their craft. And so that's like a community of practice. And there are social communities of practice, but in our field, if you want people to change what they're doing and you have really good BMPs and you want them to pivot, you want to develop relationships with these communities of practice. They have journals, they have online ways of speaking to each other, they have conferences, and this is really the most efficient and productive shortcut to getting to where we want to go. The photo here is a very good book. It's kind of like the seminal version of sort of the academic practice for communities of practice. Ooh, going on too long. Okay, I gotta move. These are links to our funded work. This was when we were had NTAs, the near-term actions, and then this is a link to our investment plans, but then you still need to go back to that Puget Sound estuary site to look for specific links. And just so you know, when you download those links, you're going to get a project overview sheet, and it'll be like a teal box. You open that up, it'll be a 2-page synopsis of the work that was funded, and there will be a contact at the on the second page. And so if you're really interested in a project that is listed there, regardless of whether the Stormwater Center was involved or not, just contact that person. And if there is a blank in here, meaning that there are no documents yet, it means that the project is still underway and they don't have any deliverables that are in there yet. So these are some friends from the Nature Conservancy. We work with the Nature Conservancy quite a bit. They have been very, very generous. They provided us with a scope of work template for stormwater and GSI facilities and parks, including regional facilities. They shared working in Indian country work that they had paid for. And most recently, they have inspired a small, although they don't really have tons of capacity, helping smaller organizations to apply for grants. I'm sure you've heard in your work that smaller jurisdictions and nonprofits are really they're under capacity. They can't hire civil engineers. They don't have time to respond to all the money that's flowing into the economy, both federally and regionally. So they've been great. And so we are starting to look at the integration and collaboration with public health and epidemiology in our toxics work. We are big fans of social marketing. For those of you who don't know what it is behavior change for good based on cognitive and social behavioral principles, and it's sort of put into a marketing framework. Don't let that word throw you off, but it is much more effective than typical engagement and outreach efforts. I'm not saying don't do that. Do that. And also look into some of the tools that are effective in social marketing. And we have funded some work in that area. And in fact, right now, I'm working on a contract with Herrera and Cascadian DH using social marketing to accelerate the use of low impact development in the 12 Puget Sound counties. And we will be issuing a $1 million behavior change RFP later this year or early next. These are some of the collaborators that we work with. For those of you who may not be familiar, there's something called local integrating organizations that were developed through the Puget Sound Partnership. And they are regional assemblages, and they include, tribes and nonprofits and local government officials. And they've been very helpful in grounding our work because, we have like high level policies. And then you have the on-the-ground work that the LIOs do, along with a number of other nonprofits. We are sorting out our familiarity with financing and funding community-based organizations. These are some of the smaller groups that are adversely impacted by stormwater and other environmental pollutants and conditions, but may not have the means to pay. And so there have been some state laws that have prevented us from making really tailored payments for participations in like RFPs and advisory groups and coming to workshops, because we convene a lot of groups. And so we're trying to work that out. Some advisors told us that you can get around that by working through a consultant. So that is a TBD conversation that is continuing. So the advisory team that we have 2 cycles ago suggested that we needed a model ordinance clearinghouse. And so the Stormwater Center got funded to develop this model ordinance clearinghouse. And we have a scope of work. We have not issued it yet, but we will be actually in the coming weeks, probably in early December. We're just working out the last kind of tidy bows. So we're really excited about that. And this is intended to help communities and jurisdictions develop ordinances and proper staffing configurations and who you put in the field in order to enhance compliance and enforcement, which is connected, but is also different, obviously. But we're very excited about that. So stay tuned. We think that it will probably be run by a consulting firm. And then over the long term, we're going to be looking at how to keep this model clearinghouse going long term. So we're looking at cooperative relationships with MSRC and some local universities, but that also has not been released yet. We're also going to be looking at HOAs, by the way. We call them sort of just neighborhood groups, but that's code for HOAs, because we all know that there's a tremendous amount of variability in how they maintain stormwater facilities. In some cases, local jurisdictions have been doing that for them. So now we're going to pivot into current toxics investment. So we have been plowing tons of money into contaminants of emerging concern research. Two of the names that you're probably most familiar with are Andy James from UWT and Bruce Sofeld from Western Washington. There, of course, there are other researchers in this area, but it's not like a million people are doing this work. But each time we fund this, we're putting in usually around $1 million. The innovative BMPs for toxic hotspots closed, and we've gotten some really interesting applications for that. We have, I'll show you in this next slide, we have addressing toxic hotspots, impacts on juvenile salmon. This is more of a sort of geographically specific RFP. We have not sent this out yet, but we're going to be looking at toxics reductions in local treatment plants. And then we've got chemical action plan implementation, and we already went through one plan of one RFP process already last year, and we got some really interesting projects in. These are ecology's chemical action plans, and most of you may know that ecology, in response to a legislative proviso, put together an action plan, which is different from a chemical action plan. And this was led by Tanya Williams, who has now moved into the Columbia River program. But in any case, there is a 6 PPDQ plan, an action plan, and it is on an easy view site. You could look it up and find it very easily. This is sort of like the website that is used by the state, and you can find that. So we're going to be issuing and getting some information on additional chemical action plan for like phthalates, and PFAS actually was the most recently to be developed. So yes, this is our use of AI. This is the permissible use of AR in our world. So this is what we call the megatoxics RFP. It is $4.5 million. We've got $1 million for the CAP implementation, $1 million for the CEC research, and then $2.5 million for addressing toxic hotspots. So a lot of this work regionally is done by the Department of Fish and Wildlife through their T-BIOS program. That's Toxics Biological Observing System. You probably know Sandy O'Neill, Andrea Carey, et al. There's about 10 of them that do outstanding work. And if you go to the Puget Sound Partnership's Vital Signs page, look for freshwater quality, you will find the Toxics in Aquatic Life link. And when you go to there, you can see the maps to see the distribution of impacts for PCBs, which are still a huge problem, PBDEs, and PAHs. And so that is, how our work is linked to them. So it'll be very interesting to see what we get in there. I think we do know that there is an Everett area commercial laundry that has been creating a lot of problems. So this is some of what we have funded. This is certainly not a full list. Again, you should go to these links. This is ongoing here. A lot of this work is being done by larger organizations like UWT and King County. It's very hard to finance and do this work unless you're kind of a big dog. This is not the kind of work that is done by communities, but certainly the CAP and other aspects of our work is much more involved with local organizations. One issue that we've been talking a lot about in the last couple of years is that some of our worst problems that we have are related to poor land use decisions, right? So a lot of stormwater problems are really driven by poor land use. And so we had dedicated $2 million to two RFPs. One is what's called Watershed Collaborative Compliance. That does involve increasing compliance rates, but also enforcement, and then integrated watershed and land use planning. And we felt that we didn't have enough information to properly issue an RFP. So we ran some workshops last year and early this year, which were very successful. We had advisors and input from the community and learned a lot about the land use planning work. We do have through David Pater at Commerce a lot of inputs that have been fabulous. And we hired Ross Strategic to help us run that. And now at this point, we're going to be running these two RFPs. They are not out yet, but they will be. DNR has something called the Sound Choices in Comprehensive Planning. It's a checklist. It's a very good document. We also ran a climate resiliency RFP, which we already have funded projects that are in various stages of development. And then right now, it's not closed yet. It'll be closing on the 31st. We've got a climate resiliency and stormwater planning. And that has been bundled with a stormwater parks and regional facilities RFP. We will be doing a contract to look at a critical analysis of the MS4 permit and its non-congruence with the Growth Management Act. The Growth Management Act is generally considered and I say this with all respect, weak from like a regulatory standpoint because Commerce is not a regulator. But we've made a lot of progress in this area. And this is just a picture of the Sound Choices implementation checklist. This is also in our public box. I can give you those links later. We've also been working with the Ecosystem Coordination Board, which the partnership runs. And there's a land use committee, and there also will be a water quality committee where we attempt to reconcile how salmon-based watershed planning is done up here with the more site-specific stormwater interventions locally. So I already went through this, but we also early on, one of our first investment plans were public roads retrofits. And so we have 4 really good projects. And we are also funding the Nature Conservancy for a 2.0 of their heat map. And we just had a very good meeting with them a couple of weeks ago, and they're going to be looking for people to join their design workshops. And basically what this means is that they're bringing users in for full day consultation so that we make sure that the heat map is also used by community members, tribes, and people who could really benefit from it. It's very complicated, and I know that many of you are probably using it already, but it allows jurisdictions to basically prioritize where they're doing their retrofits since we can't do everything all at once. This is just one really successful project that we funded up in Clallam County. And it was a countywide stormwater management plan that they had not had previously. So we're very proud of the people that we fund. They do amazing work, and it's really developed a nice set of relationships. So this is something that we didn't fund, but that was done because of our relationships. And so this is the Puget Sound Regional Council in consort with the Washington State Department of Commerce that developed guidance on integrating stormwater solutions into comprehensive plans. And this has been a very, very popular document. So we're very grateful for Erica Harris and David Pater for really moving this through. We also have been consulting with the missing middle team at the Department of Commerce. Everybody is excited and wants more housing, but these need to be finely honed integrated approaches where we can't choose either housing or trees in biophilic forms, including GSI. We really need to have both, because I can tell you, being a city dweller myself, that biophilic cover and the tree retention is absolutely essential for creating coolness and biodiversity and livability. So we can't just, in case, Puget sound like a coffin as we are building housing. And so there was a July 18th growth policy board meeting. This is something that the PSRC runs, and there were 3 outstanding presentations, and one of them was specifically how to build housing with trees. We're working on follow-up right now, and DNR is going to be issuing some guidance on how to build with trees. So for those of you on the call that are grappling with this, these are links that I think would be very interesting. So I'm going to sort of skip over this a little bit. So when we ran our land use workshops last year, I did some work with Erica Harris and did a lot of research about what's happening nationally with integration between water and land use professionals. And the American Planning Association does have a water and planning network. And Eric and I had a couple of meetings with the Lincoln Institute for Land Policy, which is also connected to the Babbitt Center. And that work is really grounded in the drought that's occurring in the Intermountain West, but the framework itself is totally suitable for land use and stormwater integration planning. And we did a lot of research on like what works. And I would like to see us hire more integrators. I never see integrators being hired. And when you ask people in their silos to work together, everyone says, holy bananas, I don't have time. So this is just a couple slides here about this. Very easy to find online. And again, in our public box, we have a lot of information related to integrated water and planning. And this is what has worked very successfully in the Intermountain West, according to the 14 years that the Lincoln Center has been working on this. They have just did a great job. So here is the marine water quality implementation strategy, which is just getting out the door. If you have questions about it, I recommend that you contact Francis Bothfeld at the Department of Ecology. This is really their bailiwick. I did facilitate a wastewater breakout, and I have to say that it was simply terrifying, since I don't know that much about wastewater, but I learned a lot. And then here are the recommendations that came out of that workshop. So I'll just let you take a look at this. And then here's some QR codes. Guess what? QR codes are not dead. COVID brought back QR codes, and we're finding them actually very useful in our work. And then this is my contact information. If you have any questions or want to talk about anything, or can't find documents, or links aren't working, please contact me.